Hey, welcome. So, we live in a world that is just overflowing with information, right? Opinions are everywhere. And in the middle of all that noise, there's one skill that is becoming absolutely essential: the ability to think for yourself. But what does that actually mean? Let's get into it.
So, let me just start by asking you a question, and I want you to be really honest with yourself. Are the thoughts in your head truly your own? It sounds like a simple question, but when you dig into it, you realize a lot of what we believe isn't something we actively chose. It's stuff we inherited from our family, our friends, our culture, you name it. And that kind of gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? For most of our day, our brain is just running on autopilot. It's reacting, processing, and going with the flow. The real art, the skill we're going to talk about, is learning how to spot when you're on autopilot and then deliberately, consciously taking manual override. It's about grabbing the steering wheel of your own mind. So, how do we even start to do that? Well, you can't build a house without a solid foundation. So first, we've got to focus on building our inner toolkit. This is all about getting the right mindset, the internal software you need to run for independent thought. And the absolute number one most important tool in that kit is intellectual humility. Now, this isn't about having low confidence or thinking you're not smart. Not at all. It's actually a sign of strength. It's having the guts to say, you know what, I might be wrong about this. Because think about it, if you can never be wrong, you can never, ever learn anything new. This leads to a huge mental shift. A lot of us, without realizing it, we tie our identity, our ego, to our ideas. So when someone attacks our idea, it feels like they're attacking us, and we defend it to the death, even if it's a bad idea. The trick is to decouple those two things. Start treating your beliefs like a working draft, something you can edit, update, and improve over time. It's not a treasured possession. It's a document you're constantly revising. You know, our brains are hardwired for taking shortcuts. They're built for efficiency, not necessarily for finding the truth. Take confirmation bias. This is the big one. It's that little voice that tells you to only click on the articles that you already agree with. To fight it, you have to do the opposite. You have to actively go looking for smart people who disagree with you. Or what about the availability heuristic? That's when you overestimate the importance of information you just heard. You see a scary news story about a plane crash, and suddenly flying feels way more dangerous, even though the stats haven't changed. The fix? Look at the long-term data, not just the latest headline. And of course, there's social proof. If everyone in your circle believes something, you just kind of assume it's true. The best way to check this is to ask yourself a simple question. Would I believe this if I were the only one? And this brings us to what might be one of the most powerful things you can say in today's world. We're always pressured to have an immediate hot take on everything, but having the courage to just say, you know what, I haven't thought about this enough to have an opinion yet, that's not weakness. That is a massive sign of intellectual strength. It's you carving out the space you need to actually think. Okay, so we've got the foundational mindset. We're humble, we've detached our ego, and we're aware of our brain's shortcuts. Great. Now let's get practical. How do we put this into practice? Let's look at some active habits and tools we can use every single day. So let's start with a really powerful one: first principles thinking. See, most of us think by analogy. We do something because it's similar to how something else was done. We follow the recipe. First principles is the total opposite. It's about ignoring the recipe completely. You break a problem down to its most basic, fundamental truths, the things you know for a fact are true. You strip away every assumption, well, this is how we've always done it. And then from that bedrock of truth, you build your conclusion from the ground up. All right, this next tool is all about being intellectually honest. On one hand, you've got straw manning. This is when you attack the weakest, silliest version of your opponent's argument. It's super easy to win that fight, sure, but you learn absolutely nothing. The real move is steel manning. You take the argument you disagree with, and you build the strongest, most intelligent, most persuasive version of it you possibly can, and then you challenge that. If your own belief can stand up against that, wow, it's pretty solid. And if it doesn't, well, you just learned something incredibly valuable. Have you ever noticed how quickly we jump from seeing something to forming a huge conclusion about it? That's because our brain climbs something called the ladder of inference in a split second. Let's say you see your boss walk past your desk without saying why. That's step one, the raw data. You select that data, you ignore the fact that they looked stressed, that's step two. Then you interpret it to mean they're mad at you, step three. And finally, you adopt the belief that you're in trouble, step four. See how fast that happened? You shot right up the ladder without even realizing it. So here's the key. When you catch yourself holding a really strong belief or judgment, you have to consciously force yourself to walk back down that ladder. Ask yourself this one simple question. What specific piece of raw data led me to believe this? Often you'll find that your massive conclusion is based on a tiny observation that you might have totally misinterpreted. Okay, so having all these tools is one thing, but actually using them consistently, day in and day out, that's a whole different ballgame. That takes discipline. So now let's talk about how we can forge these practices into a lifelong habit so that independent thought becomes your default mode, not just something you do once in a while.
This first one sounds so simple, but in our hyper-connected world, it might be the hardest one of all. You have to cultivate solitude. You need to find time to be quiet, to be away from the constant stream of tweets, news alerts, and other people's opinions. If you're never alone with your thoughts, how can you ever really hear them? And this quote just says it all perfectly. You can't come up with an original idea while you're drowning in a sea of other people's ideas. Solitude isn't empty time. It's fertile ground. It's the quiet space you need for all the little bits of information you've gathered to finally connect and grow into something that is uniquely yours. All right, here is a habit that is an absolute superpower. Write to think. Most of us think writing is just about recording thoughts we already have, but that's not its true magic. The real power of writing is that it forces you to think clearly. A vague, fuzzy idea that sounds brilliant in your head often completely falls apart when you try to nail it down in a complete sentence. The blank page is the ultimate stress test for your ideas. Now, we gotta talk about something that's a little uncomfortable. There is a social cost to thinking for yourself. If you're doing this genuinely, your conclusions aren't always gonna fit neatly into the box of one political party or social group. Your views might get a little weird, and that means you have to be willing to prioritize being intellectually honest over getting likes or fitting in. It is not easy, but it is absolutely essential. And that brings us to the end here, to the real why. Why should we go through all this trouble? Why is this so important? What is the actual goal of all this work? And let's be super clear about this. The goal is not to just be a contrarian, to disagree with everyone for the sake of it. Honestly, reflexively rejecting whatever the mainstream says is just as intellectually lazy as reflexively accepting it. It's the same autopilot, just flying in a different direction. No, the real reward, the ultimate prize at the end of this journey, is responsibility. It's the ability to stand behind your beliefs and say, I own this. This is what I think, and here's the honest work I did to get here. It's about being able to explain your reasoning, and crucially, having the integrity to change your mind when you come across better information. So I want to leave you with one final question to chew on. With all of these tools in your new toolkit, what's one belief you hold right now? Just one, that you're willing to take out, put back into that working draft folder, and re-examine from the ground up. What's first on your list?